Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Weather Sim forecast. And in today's forecast, we're going to be talking about a major winter storm pattern that's going to be coming to the United States over the next few weeks. And the reason why we're calling it that is given the fact that models are now showing major winter storms rolling on through almost continuously. And this will likely lead to not only more travel impacts, but we will also likely be talking about heavy snow, sleet, and even some freezing rain in certain areas, which will create, once again, a very dangerous weather pattern. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel so that way you guys can stay up to date with the latest. Make sure to also like today's video if you haven't already, and make sure to also leave any questions, comments, or concerns that you guys have. I'll be glad to answer those after the video, so feel free to do that, and let's get started. So the first thing I want to look at is going to be the forecast. I'm just going to quickly refresh this. There we go. And this is showing some pretty big winter storms across areas of the Great Lakes. And once again, this is pretty much going to be some snow, as you guys can see right there, which will be something to keep an eye on closely, especially since we're going to continue to see that over the next couple of hours. And let me zoom out so that way you guys can see. So like I was saying, we do have some lake effect snowfall ongoing with this winter storm that we were looking at yesterday. So all that you see was occurring over here across the Midwest yesterday, and now that is finally headed out and is now impacting areas like the eastern Great Lakes and back up there into areas of Ontario and Quebec. So we will keep an eye on that very closely, and we even got some showers and even a few thunderstorms that will continue to impact areas of the deep south, which a few isolated severe storms also cannot be rolled out. Not only that, as we take this forward, we got another big system that we're going to be watching for, which will bring a lot of heavy snowfall to areas of the Rockies. And you guys can see that as that system moves eastward, that system will likely grow in size by a lot. Just look at that very big winter storm likely impacting areas of Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and even Missouri. And you guys can see that when we take that forward, we then see a lot of that push into areas like Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, even starting to see some of that push into western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and we even got some freezing rain ongoing across parts there of Arkansas. And that winter storm will then start to produce some very heavy snowfall, including areas like Kentucky, parts there of Indiana, and even over there into Illinois, Missouri, as we will continue to be talking about either very heavy snow, sleet, and maybe even some areas of freezing rain. And that's where you see those reddish colors right there indicating some potential freezing rain. And then after that, it does look like we could potentially turn into a heavy snow event after all the sleet and freezing rain heads out. And then you guys can see that we will likely come to an end with that, and then we'll start to see a lot of that start to push into areas of the northeast and mid-Atlantic with sleet and even some freezing rain, also likely across areas of northern Virginia and even parts there of Maryland, which will be something to keep an eye on very closely. Now, if we take this into the future, like we were just talking about, we do have that next big storm, once again, that will be rolling on through, and the GFS model does want to show it being all snow instead of it turning into sleet. So an all snow would definitely make this a pretty big winter storm for areas of the Ohio Valley and Midwest, and same goes with the Northeast, as we could potentially be talking about some pretty big snowfall totals there. And then after that heads out, we do have another one that we'll need to watch for, which will start by bringing some areas of isolated snowfall, especially since this is only going to be impacting just a few areas so we will kind of have these small clippers that come off of it, and that could maybe bring some snowfall to areas of the Ohio Valley before we see that main storm roll on through, which is this one right here. Look at that. GFS model is showing potentially a winter storm for areas of Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. Look at that. Maybe even some freezing rain as far down south as western Kentucky and even parts there of southeast Missouri. And that freezing rain may even continue by the time we head into, once again, later next week, which I don't know if I said that, but this is about when we'll see this next winter storm roll on through, is early next week, or later this week, I should say. So we will definitely watch that closely, as there could potentially even be some winter impact to areas of North Carolina too. And then after that heads out, look at that, even another big winter storm could roll on through for areas of the northern Ohio Valley before we then start to see that change over to just all snowfall, which could then impact areas maybe a little bit farther down south, but it mainly looks to be just rain. And we also can't rule out a couple areas of thunderstorms too with that system. And then we do need to watch potentially even another big winter storm that could roll on through by the time we head into the middle of December, but that is also still really far out, so I would probably take that with a grain of salt. Let's take a look at our snowfall totals now. First, starting off with the ARRR model. That is what we were first looking at, by the way, and this model wants to show some little strips. I call them strips because they're kind of like straight lines. So from about Arkansas all the way up there into areas of Ohio, we do have a strip there showing between about 2 to 3 inches of snow, maybe even a few areas gain a little bit more than that, especially where you see those darker blues. We do also have another strip of snow heading from southeast Missouri all the way up there into Indiana, where we once again could be talking about some pretty big snowfall too, and same goes across parts there of western Kentucky, potentially getting on some of that heavier snowfall too as well. And then we also got, once again, that other big part of it that will likely impact areas of Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa, Missouri, where we could maybe get an additional 4 inches of snow, which is quite a bit, because that's almost half of what we got yesterday. So that's kind of crazy if we get almost half of what we got in, and potentially maybe even a few isolated areas getting up to 7 inches, which would be really crazy, guys. This is really going to be quite mind-blowing, since, we're just seeing, once again, continuous snowfall over some of the same areas that even got it yesterday. And then with freezing rain, we do see some freezing rain showing up, but it doesn't really look like this model is really showing much in the way of freezing rain for areas of the Ohio Valley, which would be good news. But we could once again get some of that across Arkansas, and even some of that across areas of North Carolina and Virginia, which we will keep an eye on closely, especially later this week. And then the GFS model is showing potentially even more snowfall with this next system. So instead of just showing those small strips, this actually shows maybe getting close to 4 inches of snow in some areas, instead of it only being like a couple inches. So that would definitely make this a pretty big winter storm with the GFS model, and that will be tomorrow and even Tuesday. And then after that heads out, we get even another winter storm once again to roll on through, especially later this week, as we could maybe get an additional inch of snow or two. And look at that, even New England really getting up on that snowfall a lot too, really looking like a pretty dangerous, once again, winter storm for those areas. And that could potentially even be a nor'easter, and then after that maybe even another big round of some winter weather. And this model in particular is actually showing some pretty good freezing rain across areas of Arkansas, Missouri, western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and even parts there of the lower Ohio Valley, maybe getting close to a 10th. And then it's also pretty aggressive on the freezing rain across areas of the Carolinas, especially North Carolina, Virginia, and even parts there of West Virginia. And we are only heading out to Saturday, guys, at the end of this week. So like I said, just so that we guys understand what I'm saying, we got got that one winter storm rolling on through tomorrow and even Tuesday of this week, which will impact areas of the Ohio Valley and even down there into the Kentucky Valley area. And then we got that second system rolling on through later this week, especially on Friday, where we could potentially be talking about, once again, maybe an additional snow and ice over here across areas of this area, and then maybe even some pretty big ice with that one across areas of Virginia and even North Carolina. And once again, that will be at the very end of this week when we see that. And then the last thing I want to look at is the European model, which actually shows quite a bit of ice with that next one later this week, and it's even a lot more aggressive on the snowfall too. Cause look at that, this drops potentially more than a foot of snowfall for areas of Michigan, and look at that, even shows up to 8 inches of snowfall as far down south as Indy, and that's just with this next system, guys, early and later this week. And look at that, maybe even a little bit more snowfall farther down south too. So definitely looking like a pretty concerning weather pattern overall, so we will need to keep an eye on that very closely. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, as we will continue to keep you guys up to date with the latest, and there is still going to be some changes on the way, so we don't want you guys to, take this as your exact forecast, because there are going to be some shifts and turns in the weather pattern as we continue to head into the future. But we at least want you guys to be aware, and so make sure you guys are prepared for that. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend out there, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye.